بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
بسم الله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Jazakumullah khair for everybody for tuning in. This is part of the series of My Journey to Knowledge. So Alhamdulillah, today we're blessed to have Sheikh Dr. Waleed Basuni, who is currently residing in the States. Sheikh Waleed Basuni, again, he probably needs no introduction to our audience. But he is a sheikh who graduated from Jamiat al-Imam from Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. He completed his master's and then went on to do his PhD. His expertise or his takhassus, his speciality is in Aqidah, is in theology, Islamic theology. He's currently an Imam in a Masjid in America. He is also the vice president and an instructor for Al-Maghrib Institute. Alhamdulillah, the Sheikh is a senior person in the West when it comes to Islamic issues, when it comes to fatwa, and we're blessed to have him with us again, Alhamdulillah. So Sheikh, inshallah, this session, we would just want to ask you a few questions about knowledge, gaining knowledge, your own personal story or your journey when it comes to seeking knowledge. So Sheikh, the first thing I want to ask you yourself, as a young man growing up in Dammam, from what I understand, Saudi Arabia, what inspired you to start your journey of seeking knowledge? I know that part of Saudi Arabia, it's not necessarily known for its perhaps for its scholars or even for its institutes of learning Islamic knowledge. So what inspired you living in that part of the world, in that part of the country, to start your journey to seeking knowledge?
Jazakallah khair. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, salatu ala rasulillah. First of all, thank you for inviting me to this, and not of showing humbleness or like being mutawada or anything like that, but I don't think I deserve these titles or these descriptions of seniority or anything like that. But and also I don't think that my journey to knowledge is something that I believe it is just a role model or anything like that. I think there is maybe in my life things that can inspire people and help. And as we all know, knowledge has a beginning but has no end. And we always see ourselves as a student of knowledge. And I many times I heard Sheikh Al-Albani, rahimahullah, when he was described as a alim or a scholar, he would say, La, no, we are just a student of knowledge. And we keep reminding ourselves that, even though we realize that, alhamdulillah, over the years, the person acquired information and knowledge and tried to transfer that to actions. As for how this happened, I didn't come from a family that's known to be scholars or shuyukh or hufad al-Quran or anything like that. My parents, like any average Middle Eastern family, you know, my father, alhamdulillah, prayed since he was 7 years old. My mom prays, and my father's an engineer. My mother is just an art teacher, you know. And it was quite shocked for them to know that I decided to go to that route, because none of our family, extended family, uncles, none of them has anything to do with Sharia or study Sharia. So I'm the first one in my whole entire family. And just to put things in perspective, my father has over 14 brothers and sisters. You know, so like I have a huge like family, uncles and stuff like that, and cousins. So for me to be the only one coming from that, you know, big family was something like, you know, quite surprised for them. And I say that the fadl for this is for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, first and foremost, and no doubt. أنا أحمد الله وأشكره وأثني عليه الخير كله. And I don't think I can thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala enough for this ni'mah, because in my life I have seen a lot of people have underestimated the value of knowledge, and for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to guide and to open the heart of someone to learn the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that's a ni'mah. Sometimes I feel that we don't even deserve it and we don't appreciate it as it should be, especially in the light of knowing what the Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said في حديث معاوية رضي الله عنه من يريد الله به خيرا يفقهه في الدين. Whoever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala intend good for him or her will guide them to, or wants good for them, will guide them to understand the religion. And understand the religion is even a deeper level than just acquiring information. Khan ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu ardah, whenever he tried to understand a verse and it's kind of hard for him to understand it or an issue, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala opened his heart and mind to understand it fully and feel comfortable with his understanding of it, he would make sujood and he will be in tears, thanking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And he said, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala intend good for me at this point because of the hadith that I just mentioned earlier. So that's something we should be always aware of. And we thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for it. And every time Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala open a door for you or give you an opportunity and you learn and you add to your ilm and to see yourself in this field, in this direction, that you see yourself interested in learning the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that's a great blessing. Can I tell you, and I have seen a lot of people in my life, they don't care. They care less about ilm. Look around you, look at the people around you. How many people care really to know? Look at the numbers of scholars comparing to the numbers of businessmen, numbers of doctors, engineers, accountants. Just look at the numbers. It speaks for itself. You know, look at the people who cares about acquiring Sharia and learning the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala versus the people who seek the dunya. I'm not saying seeking the dunya is wrong, but just to show you that this is something not, very few people, and very few people only among the few have a good understanding and maybe have the best intention and so forth.
So, Sheikh,
I'm sorry to the long introduction.
No, so
just one,
Sheikh,
yeah.
I wanted to ask, so is this a manifestation of the hadith that you mentioned, that whoever Allah Azza wa Jal wants good for, he gives him fiqh of this deen? So you mentioned that there's X amount of doctors and engineers, but those people who are actually in the field of da'wah, actually in the field of teaching Islamic knowledge, is this a clear sign that Allah Azza wa Jal wants good for these people, right?
Absolutely. Al-khair is levels. Goodness is many different levels. And the more you knowledge, the more your knowledge goes, the more khair you get, the more open doors you have. And the less knowledge you have, the deeper understand you have, the more fiqh, because fiqh is a bigger word. Fiqh include understanding, wisdom, applying. It has an effect on your heart. It results in your own self-righteousness. There's a lot of this very loaded word, yufaqihu fi din. So this basically, so it doesn't mean if you're a doctor you cannot be a scholar. You can be, but I'm talking about someone who dedicated his life just to show you that there's few people really dedicated their life to focus on ilm and knowledge and to grow in that the area. But even the average Muslim have a little bit of ilm and knowledge, but he will be having a share from this hadith according to his interest and his commitment. Just as a final point, I just want to say that what also helped me a lot is friends. That's what really motivated me to go. I had a very committed friends when I grew up in middle school and early in my youth time. Alhamdulillah, kept me in the right path. And the good thing about this group, they were more interested in knowledge than anything else. So we used to have circles with some local judges in our area, in our neighborhood, read with them books. And also we used to, because of the lack of, Riyadh and the area where a lot of big names of scholars were far away from us. So and we were like young, like first year freshmen in high school, kind of hard for us to travel on our own, even though we did several times spend weeks and months when we still like in the end of middle school, going to high school. We used to go in group and stuff like that. But the people that we're surrounded with were very committed. And that's a key point. If you have a friend who committed to knowledge, you will be amazed how much you can acquire. And give you example, like for example, we used to work among ourselves. So for example, I used to teach them Mustalah al-Hadith, and I'm still in high school, but how do I do that? I'll go listen to a series of lectures, at that time, the tape cassette, for example, then I will listen to it, I will prepare it, I make a phone call, I ask, then I come and I teach it to my friends, whatever I learn. And I tell them, this is the summary of this 10 hours of class. This is the summary of this book. And I give no fatwa, I know my limit, you know, and they do the same time on another topic. So in 1 month, we will be covering so many topics in a very fast pace. Or for example, gather to say, hey, we're gonna read. So I will have one chapter, for example, from big books, like you talk about, like Shuruh al-Ahadith al-Mutawwala or al-Fiqh al-Mutawwal, you know, just to read it. Books like 10 volumes and stuff like that. Every one of us will read from one volume, and we'll have a 2-hour sitting. So our gathering, I was blessed to have friends like that. And that's what really motivated me. You know, we encourage each other to travel to Riyadh, to Qasim, to study with Sheikh Ibn Uthaymeen, to Riyadh, to study with Sheikh Bin Baz, rahimahullah ta'ala, to Mecca, to Medina, and so forth. So this is basically what I think was one of the blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He put in my way that inspired me a lot. And I can say, and without any hesitation, that a big chunk of what I have today, you know, I'm past my 50s, what I have today, I can contribute it to my high school days. A big chunk of what I memorized, I learned, it is like in that an early time of my life. And another big chunk will be in college. Then, you know, as you grow, and the journey is have a different stage. Yes.
Jazakumullah khair, Sheikh. So look, just in this first portion of what you mentioned that you studied, or you went over a few books initially, and you taught it to those people around you. So this particular point here of you know, we find nowadays where people who don't maybe not know their level, not know where to stop. So they might pick up a book, or they might listen to a cassette, and all of a sudden they're on YouTube passing fatwa, they're talking about things which they have no knowledge about, and they cause more damage to the da'wah than they do benefit. So where do you draw the line? How do you know whether you have knowledge, and how do you know that you can teach that knowledge?
I would say, let's start with this statement from Imam Ahmad rahimahullah ta'ala. When he was asked, what is al-ikhlas fil ilm? How can a person be sincere in his journey in seeking knowledge? He said, أن تنوي به رفع الجهل عن نفسك. That your intention is to remove your own ignorance. I'll say to those people who go and they have no knowledge and just pick a book and you go and you start teaching on YouTube or in other places. Why are you teaching? When I was sitting in high school teaching Al-Aqidah Al-Wasatiyya or Mustalah Al-Hadith, Al-Ba'ith Al-Hadith, you know, I was not doing this to teach people. I'm not trying to make us students. I was doing this in order for me to understand this book, to memorize what's in this book. Because when you teach something, you memorize it very well. When I was teaching, you know, Bulugh al-Maram, and I was like 16 or 17, not Bulugh al-Arba'in Nawawiyya, not because I'm Sheikh and I know that. No, I just repeat exactly what's in the book. And the people that I didn't do this for the Amma, for the public, I did this with my friends, with a small circle of people, with people who will watch me and correct me. And guess what? Even sometimes, even some elders and mentors and some of my teachers will attend to my class and will give me the feedback. So the intention should be about you to learn. But I agree with you. This is something like very, you know, sad that everybody today goes online and just, you know, that's not allowed actually. and that's haram for you to spread jahl, ignorance, and to just destroy the deen by passing wrong information. And by the way, there is two types of ignorance. A simple ignorance, which you don't know something. And there is a double ignorance, which you don't know that you don't know. When you think you know, but in reality you don't. So this is very dangerous. And those who goes and talk thinking that they know everything, but in reality they don't. And they can, and the Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, فَيَتَّخِذُونَ رُؤُوسًا جُهَالًا. They will take ignorance as a source of knowledge and guidance, and they will be asked. What they will answer with the Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, they will answer with their opinions, بالرأي, and with their opinion, which is not based on Quran. Your opinion is okay if you based on good, solid understanding of Quran and Sunnah. But the opinion that is not based on Quran and Sunnah, not based on understanding the Sharia and the principle, that's ignorance. هذا جهل. ولذلك جاء في الحديث, one said opinion, one said جهل, ignorance. And also, فضلوا وأضلوا. They are misguided and they mislead people with this way. And I would say also we have another extreme. That in the other extreme is that we kind of suppress, and we don't want our student to flourish. We don't want people to grow. You know, one of the things that I noticed in the Muslims in America, in the African American community in America, something I thought it's good. Maybe it needs a little bit of, I'm not very deeply involved with the community, so I can't really judge it, but the concept is very interesting to me. That in the African American community, I noticed in America, that they produce leaders very fast, and they give them title like imams. Sometimes even they call them, give them certain names, and you see they grow. And also some schools that they do that, and you see young man will grow, will go from A to B to C and so forth. What I notice in so many conservative circles, that whenever a person learn the deen, he always will be suppressed, will be always said, be quiet, don't talk, there is someone else. And a lot of people think that they have no place to contribute, no place to give, and that's wrong. I think it's a strength to have those people supervised, giving them the trust, put them in the front, and advancing them, giving them the respect, because knowledge was never ever about age, and leadership is never about age. Generally speaking, yes, there are certain things in ilm is based on experience, but these are big issues like fatwa in regard to war or peace, big things require a lot of experience about the world. But I'm talking about just regular things. Somebody teaching tafsir al-Quran from Tafsir ibn Kathir, or somebody, not simple, it doesn't mean it's not important. I'm talking about someone will do his homework, you give him opportunity to grow. And that's, in my opinion, important. But I agree, we should not use this as a platform for the general public as much as it's in the masjid, in the local. And I think we need to learn also that not everything it has to be online. I mean, with you guys in lockdown, that's different with the coronavirus. But I mean, generally speaking, there is this notion that anything has to be online. That's not true. I have a class with my students, just they benefit from it. Sometimes it fits the audience, but it doesn't mean it fits the people who are online. They might not relate to it.
Jazakumullah khair, Sheikh. Sheikh, in the first portion of this discussion, you mentioned the names of some mashayikh. You mentioned Sheikh Ibn Jibreen, you mentioned Sheikh Uthaymeen, you mentioned Sheikh Bin Baz, rahimahumullah. So, Sheikh, in terms of these names that you've mentioned, who's really inspired you? Who's really touched you the most in terms of, first of all, from a character perspective, in terms of personality, and then secondly, I guess from a knowledge perspective, who's inspired you the most, and are there any particular incidents or moments that you had with them?
A lot, but and every one of them have inspired me in a different way. I'll be honest. Some of them like, I'll tell you an interesting story happened to me about this particular question. When I went to Riyadh, I moved to Riyadh. There is so many mashayikh. There is Bin Baz, there is Bin Jibreen, there is Sheikh Salih Al-Fawzan, there is Sheikh Abdullah Al-Dayan, there is, like, you name it. Every one of them is a giant. Sheikh Salih Al-Haydan. And I tend to, with all these names, too much sometimes. Sheikh Abdul Rahman Al-Barrak. Okay. And I said, who do I study with? Who I can? You know, it's just too much. So I went to Shaykh Abdul Razak, rahimahullah, and I asked him, what should I do? You know, with all those mashayikh. Then he gave me an interesting answer. He said, هؤلاء العلماء مفاتيح للعلم. Those ulama are keys to the knowledge. But the knowledge itself is something that you have to do on your own. It's your research, it's your reading, it's your homework that you do at home, while the ulama will give you the key. So when you study with the alim, he said, what should you worry about the most? And this is a golden advice from Shaykh Razak, rahimahullah. He said, al-ilm is two. Ilm masail wa ilm wasail. Keys and skills. And also there's another one, which is information. The information, it's endless. Yani, I would never spend I'm not going to be able to acquire every single information Bin Baz has. And he said that will be maybe your goal, but you will get very little. But what he advised me to do, when I go to Bin Baz, I look at the skills that he has, the ways he deals with knowledge, the way he answered the fatwa, the way he analyzed things, the methods that he used to come to our conclusion, that he made a tarjih, how he looked at the ahadith, how he looked at the aqwal al-fuqaha, how he treated. And that really triggered me and shifted completely my way of studying with the mashayikh. So I really, when I study Bin Baz, I'm not looking much to study or acquire information and his opinions over things. I'm really learning how he deal with things. And same thing with Uthaymeen, because every one of them has a very unique way, and some of them are more more interesting than others and deeper than others, and they're analyzing and they're basically being critical thinkers. So that's one thing I really benefited a lot with the ulama and mashaykh that I studied with. Another thing that Bin Baz rahimahullah, he used to be known as Al-Waleed, the father. And that's very interesting. In Nabi sallallahu huwa abu lahum, in one of the qira'at, his father and his wives are ummahatul mu'mineen. And that's very interesting that the Nabi sallallahu was called a father. So the relationship between us and the Prophet sallallahu is like a family relationship. And that's exactly how I felt to Sheikh Bin Baz rahimahullah. He's like a father. I never felt he's just a teacher. Someone I can talk to him about personal thing. He is so accommodating, so nice, so welcoming. I know that sounds strange for some people because that doesn't sound like a father, but good fathers and dads, you know, that's what they're supposed to. You know, I know many of my friends, Sheikh Bin Baz, help them to get married. You know, I know people like he will go eat food, like, you know, in the morning, like some beans and stuff like that, in just a small shop in the morning after Fajr. You know, one time I was walking with Sheikh Bin Baz rahimahullah, and he walked to his car and he entered from a special door in front of the masjid. So when we reached to the car, he said he's blind. So he told me, I'm sure you don't have your shoes. I said, no. And he said, go get your shoes. I'll wait for you. Yeah, Sheikh, don't worry. I don't need my shoes. He said, no, go your shoes. Or you get in the car and we drive around and we take you to the other side of the masjid to get your shoes. I said, no, Sheikh, just whatever you want. He said, no, just go and I'll wait for you. Then he said, let's go together to the house. And I mean, just a kid, literally. Why would he treat me this way? You know, it just, the way he's so good in maintaining that high level of knowledge, but also so good in connecting with people. Like, so down to earth.
Yeah, this is the point.
And some juhal thought Bin Baz has no ilm. Because of the simplicity of Sheikh Bin Baz, rahimahullah.
Sheikh, this is something that I wanted to touch upon with Sheikh Bin Baz in particular. Like what you said, some people think, or some people assume that he had no knowledge, or he had very little knowledge, and this was due to his fiqh of understanding who he was talking to. So I think a lot of his general muhadarat, or his kalima after a prayer or before a prayer, were very simple, short messages to the general Muslim. But the people behind the scenes, they didn't realize that he would have private sessions where he would go through Bukhari, go through Muslim, go through these books. So they would say, look, he has very little knowledge. And from what I've seen, his students today, some of his students today have actually carried on with this manhaj of their public durus, muhadarat. They're very simple. They're very, straightforward, basic knowledge, things that every Muslim needs to know. But behind closed doors, they have private sessions with their students where they, focus on ilm and go through. So, yeah, how was he behind the scenes, behind closed doors? And this notion that Sheikh Bin Baz's knowledge was at a very simple level. How could you touch upon that, please?
Just to know how deep his knowledge is, look at his students. There is not a single scholar that you are aware of today, he is not one of his students. Ibn Uthaymeen, when he mentioned, oh, my shuyukh, first one, Bin Baz, or second comes after Sheikh Said. Just look, Sheikh Fawzan, Sheikh Abdulaziz al-Sheikh, the Grand Mufti of Saudi Arabia, Sheikh bin Jibreen. Look at the quality of students that he produced to the Ummah. Sheikh Abdul al-Khariq, who died not long time ago. In Medina, just look at the quality of students that he produced. Rahimahullah, I have never seen alim in my life have made scholars like him, made so many scholars like him. That's number one. Number two, also Sheikh Bin Baz, rahimahullah, whoever look at some of his comments, especially in ilm al-hadith, and especially in masail al-i'tiqad, he speaks little, but just straight to the point. And that reminds you of ilm al-salaf. Ilm al-salaf, if you look at it, you'll say those people have no ilm. It's so simple, just few words here, few comments here. It's the same thing, while they are very deep in knowledge, but they don't talk too much, like the khalaf, like the later one. Shaykh rahimahullah athari, and he likes to stick to the athar. I would witness in one gathering, for example, in class on Thursday, where he stayed like about 2-3 hours teaching every single major book you can think of. And every time when we read in books like a book would say 10 volumes, 20 volumes, like mutawwalat al-kutub, a very deep, long shot. Sometimes the qari will have a hard time to read a sentence or something like that. Sheikh will correct him, will comment on it. That means not necessarily he memorized it, but it is so clear in his mind. In one gathering, it will come up 60, 70 hadith in the gathering. Oh, hadith al-Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, yes, this hadith reported by so and so and so and so and so and so. If you Muslim Ahmad, fil Bazzar, even some of the it's not of the 6 books of hadith, he still recognized them. And I can count in 4 or 5 years that I spent with Sh Bin Baz, rahimahullah, I can think of maybe few times, maybe 5 times, he said, I don't know who reported this hadith. We might need to review it. And sometimes he referred to Abdullah Sa'ad. He said, Shaykh Abdullah, do you know which hadith is this? And mashallah, he's ready to answer. So, and I witnessed that a couple of times. At least one time now, that's clear in my head. So, Bin Baz, rahimahullah, this is something about him. This issue of al-ilm. And with the students, he listened and he talked. And subhanAllah, look at his fatawa. His fatawa are just based on the dalil. And he's Hanbali, rahimahullah. But he was not at all muta'assib. Whenever he finds the dalil not with the Hanbali madhab, he will go with it. And if you look at his fatawa and you see how deep his fatawa and how well established, you'll be amazed. But see, Sheikh Baz, rahimahullah, he's not the type of scholar who like to complicate his answers and show off with all this fancy usul al-fiqh terminologies. No, he's not like that. He is very, very, very straightforward. ولذلك كان شيخنا الشيخ عبد الرزاق عفيفي رحمه الله يقول الشيخ بن باز هذا رجل نزع من القرن الثالث ووضع في زماننا الله أبقاه بزمانه. الشيخ بن باز said الشيخ عبد الرزاق عفيفي رحمه الله several times, and one of the time I witnessed that he was crying when he was saying that. He said Sheikh Bin Baz is a scholar who belonged to the 3rd century, the early 3 centuries in Islam, 3rd century. Allah kept him for us in the 20th century, just to give us an example of how the Salaf used to be. And he is right. This man lived a life not like anyone. I don't know any alim in dunya like him. That's why I don't know any scholars in the history of Islam, not only now, in the history of Islam, since Muhammad time until today. Somebody, his janazah was witnessed like Bin Baz rahimahullah. There is no one. The amount of love. Can you imagine when he died? They prayed janazah on him in every single major masjid. Maybe even in Green Lane Masjid, they prayed janazah on him. Even those who don't take the opinion of janazah, yani salat al-ghaib, they prayed ghaib. In Houston, I didn't pray in my masjid because I don't believe it is sunnah or anything like that. But in Houston, I know several masajid did that. They don't know anything about Bin Baz. I was like, what? They did that. In Mecca, Medina, do you know the Saudi Airlines? And by the way, this was not a government request, was not a prince or a governor or king, anything. It just initiated by the local people in the Saudi Airline. They made a rule, they made a deal that if you're flying to Jeddah from anywhere in Saudi Arabia to pray janazah on Sheikh Bin Baz rahimahullah, because janazah was prayed in Mecca. If you're traveling to Mecca for that purpose, your round trip tickets for free.
Sheikh,
can you imagine that?
Yes. So look, Sheikh, it's a sign of Allah's acceptance. So how, for example, Imam al-Nawawi, his books, his books are found in probably every masjid that you see. Sheikh Bin Baz, like you said, this is a sign of Qabul, that Allah has accepted his, inshallah, Allah has accepted him. So how does a person achieve this? Or, you could say it's the Sheikh's intentions, that, everything was solely for the sake of Allah. What did you see in his life that...
It's this, Sheikh. It's this. The heart. It's unbelievable. Have no hate, rahimahullah ta'ala. Straightforward. Whatever is in his heart is in his tongue. And I give you 2 stories about this, or 3 quickly. One, Sheikh Ja'far Sheikh Idris told me once, he said, we had a group of people from Sudan, delegate from Sudan, came to visit Sheikh Baz, and among them a professor who's Christian. So they said to Sheikh Ja'far, please tell Sheikh Bin Baz he's your friend and stuff like that, he's a student, he's your Sheikh. Tell him we have a Christian, so just be careful, yani, just to prepare him for it. So Sheikh Ja'far Sheikh, I told him in his ear, by the way, we have a... Then after we said, everybody introduced himself, then Sheikh Bin Baz rahimahullah said, "Man al-Nasrani minkum?" He said, who is the Christian among you? Then Ja'far Sheikh said, everyone in the guy said, oh my God. Then the Sheikh said, who is the Christian among you? Then he said, that will be me. He said, ما شاء الله تعرف العربية هل سمعت قول الله تعالى. Then he started reciting for him, in Surah Maryam, آخر Surah An-Nisa, and he talked to him and remind him of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the oneness of Allah, and Isa alayhi salam, how would you believe in him, and Maryam alayhi salam, and he finished. Sheikh Bin Baz rahimahullah, he thought actually, the natural thing, he thought that Sheikh Ja'far telling him it would be an excellent opportunity for you to give him dawah. That's a clean heart. So after they finished, Sheikh Ja'far said, some of the head of the university and the professor, they told this Christian guy, they said, we're sorry if there's any embarrassment. He said, embarrassment what? He said, I've been living among you guys 50 years or more. No one ever told me this, what the old man told me. That was beautiful. I'm very grateful to him. SubhanAllah, this heart is just unbelievable. It's so clean, so yani, you can tell from the way he deal with people. Another story I can tell you about how clean heart he is, rahimahullah. Nothing personal. It's just everything. It's for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this story is mentioned by Dr. Yusuf Al-Qaradawi. He said, when I first came to Saudi Arabia and I was invited to Sheikh Bin Baz, I want to get a permission for my book to be published in Saudi Arabia. It's a big market, halal haram. So he said, Sheikh Bin Baz, when he welcomed me and he was very generous with me, then he said, let's go in a private room in Mukhtasar. So he took him inside and he told him, by the way, I read your book and Jazakallah khair, but I have the following point. Then Dr. Al-Qaradawi said, he pointed so many things, some I agree and many I didn't agree with him, and I kept telling him back and forth, and he said, insisted in his opinion. Al-Qaradawi said, it's like, defending a thesis kind of. He said, I left the office and I was saying, Allah hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. He never gonna give a permission for the book to be printed because it has a lot of things he doesn't agree with. Like, for example, Qaradawi has a talk about al-wala al-bara, that the Shaykh didn't agree with the language of it. He didn't agree with some of the musics and stuff like that. He said the surprise was that Bin Baz rahimahullah actually wrote a permission for the book to be published in Saudi Arabia. Al-Qaradawi said, he taught me a lesson. His wajib is to give me the advice. His wajib it was not about him or it's about me advising you and giving you the advice. And at the end of the day, I have my opinion and I have my evidence to what position I'm taking. That's not someone who's like, have a grudge or hate or use his power. And the final one, I say, I made Hajj once with the Sh Bin Baz rahimahullah, and one of the brothers, Sh Bin Baz rahimahullah, was in his tent in Arafah. So one of the Mashaykh entered his tent after Asr. Blind people are loud. I don't know if you guys know that or not, but generally speaking, blind people are loud by nature. If you've ever been around blind people, I've been around them most of my life. We see in masjids and stuff like that. It's very loud by nature. So I guess they compensate the lost sense of sighting, of seeing. Anyway, so the Sh Bin Baz rahimahullah was making dua. The brother said, I kept going inside the tent to check on the Sheikh, see if he needs, and the Sheikh was raising his hand making dua. He said, from maybe before Asr time, all the way until we left. The time to leave, or all the time to leave to go from Arafah to Muzdalifah. The whole entire time. He said, I entered every maybe 20 minutes, 15 minutes, sometimes 5 minutes, and I heard him saying the same exact dua. Every time I go inside, I heard the same exact dua. He was saying, Allahumma aslih li qalbi, Allahumma aslih li qalbi, Allahumma aslih li qalbi. Ya Allah, fix my heart. Ya Allah, make my heart guided. Ya Allah, purify my heart. That's what aslih means. All his dua is about his heart. And I think that's one of the secrets behind that great success and legacy that he leaves behind, rahimahullah. I have a whole lecture. It's called On the Footsteps of Muhammad sallallahu in the 20th century. And it's about Sheikh Bin Baz, rahimahullah. Why I do see him, and one of the best examples of those who really represents the way of Muhammad sallallahu and the Salaf al-Salih in our modern days, and in many different ways.
Jazakumullah khair, Sheikh. Sheikh, you mentioned some names. You mentioned some names in the previous segment or the previous question. Some names that maybe in the normal Salafi circle would be, people would raise their eyebrows and say, Sheikh or Dr. Yusuf Qaradawi, Abdurrahman al-Khaliq, these people who, they've obviously benefited and had positive impact in people's lives. But obviously they've, maybe they've made mistakes here, they've made mistakes there. What was in your experience, with Sheikh Bin Baz, Sheikh Uthaymeen, Sheikh Jibreen, how did they deal with differences and maybe, people who are known to have, strange thoughts or ideas and maybe past, strange fatwa? How did they deal with these people?
Yeah. I think all of them have a consistent way, which is, and very identical almost, which is number one, what is wrong is called out as wrong, straightforward. It doesn't matter who the person is. If he is Ibn Uthaymeen himself, or Bin Baz himself, or Bin Fawzan himself, or Ibn Jibreen himself, if it's wrong, he will say it, and he will say what he believes is it is wrong, and he will focus on the issue, not the person. Okay, so he will make sure that he clarify his position from this issue, and will clarify what's the Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's rule. And when he make this, he make it with the dalil, he make it with the evidence, and he will mention why he disagree with this opinion. Okay, so that notion of just rubbing on the ground, under the carpet, or just to ignore it, that's not part of the methodology. They will mention it if there is something wrong that they believe, and it's basically obviously worth mentioning. That's number one. Number two, they still maintain the respect. They still maintain that, because as we all know, Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah believe that al-mu'min yajtami' fi as-sunnah wal-bid'ah wal-fujur wal-taqwa. We do believe that the one person has iman and has Islam and has ikhlas and has a lot of good things, and also can have sins and can have a bid'ah, and can, he doesn't leave the fold of Islam, still has the rights of my Muslim brothers and sisters, even if he have done something wrong, even if it is a bid'ah, even if it is wrong. And that's not something new. This is how ulama, century after another, and that's how Ahl Sunnah rahimahumullah through history, they never cancel a person just because of one mistake or two, but they pointed out also there's a difference between a mistakes that it is a major bid'ah, which is make the person mubtadi', dhal, and even with this, it still have certain rules and guidelines. But Bin Baz rahimahullah, Ibn Uthaymeen, and Ibn Jibreen, you would never see them using bad language, being sarcastic, being disrespectful of people. No. Also, rahimahullah ta'ala, they didn't allow these names to be used. And I remember Shaykh Uthaymeen rahimahullah, especially, he said, not because someone called himself Salafi, it means he's a good person. You can call yourself Salafi as much as you want, and you are not. Simple as that. And you can call him Ikhwani, but he is not anyone but a good Muslim. You can call him Tablighi, but he is a Sunni Muslim. So he refused to judge people with these titles. And many times he mentioned things of that nature, rahimahullah ta'ala. So that's another issue, that in mustalahat al-hadith, these new terminologies, it will not be used to judge people as much as they judge them based on how much they follow the Quran and Sunnah of the Prophet. Also, Shaykh bin Uthaymeen rahimahullah and Sheikh Baz, one of the things that is very clear to me in their classes, and we learned this from them, that when someone asked about individuals, they used to hate this a lot. They don't like it, and they said, focus on the issue, not the person. I remember people came to Sheikh Baz rahimahullah, and they tried their best to get a word out of him, a very strong word against some of the leaders of the Muslim Brotherhood movement in the past. And Sheikh Baz rahimahullah refused to give them that statement that they want. He understands what they say. He doesn't have a problem. Sheikh Baz rahimahullah, in his interview, once he was asked about Hassan al-Banna, which is the father of the Muslim, for example, and he said he's one of the mujaddideen of this century. Can you imagine that? If some people hear that? But also in the same time, Sheikh Baz explained why Hassan al-Banna has also many mistakes in Aqidah and Dawah, and he disagreed with 1, 2, 3, 4. Shaykh Abdul Razak Afifi rahimahullah said to me once how because he lived in Egypt, and he was telling me about how these differences that it happened. He said to the extent that some of these jama'at and some of those extreme Sufis, they used to attend my class, but they don't pray behind me. When I was in Egypt, Jama'at Salat Muhammadi, so they will not pray behind me because they think I'm mubtadi', some extreme Salafi, you know, Ansar al-Sunnah, kind of Wahhabi type of vibe. But they will attend my class because they know they will learn. And Sheikh would tell me, I said, and you let them? I said, طبعا يا وليد, absolutely. I let them, they benefit. I have no problem. And I ask him many questions about, you know, that time, you know, people ask about, like, we're just young and get to know. I didn't know anything about these jama'at and these names until like in college, you know. I know about it a little in high school, but it never my focus, you know. But when I started asking the Sheikh, and he's telling me, I found it, they don't have that sensitivity that some people have. The helpless have that wrong. Don't judge people just by these names. We judge people by what is correct. And we take each issue by itself, unless the person became known that he is calling people for bid'ah and misguided. And this is a different story. That's a different story. They will not happen. Like, for example, their position was very strong against Muhammad Ali Malki, who was a very big name in Sufism and attacking Ahl Sunnah and writing against them. He was very clear against it. And many other names like this. Another point also, Sheikh Abdul Razak once told me, he said, this is a golden advice that I follow in my da'wah. That's one of my methodology, or one of the golden advice that I follow in my da'wah, which is, he told me, Waleed, ضع يدك مع الجميع. And I swear to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this is verbatim. Like, I would say this is exactly how he said it, if I'm not mistaken. He said, put your hand with everybody, hold everybody's hand, and participate in every khair, in every goodness. But make sure that everybody knows that you are Salafi, that you stand for Ahl Sunnah, you stand for what is the Salaf Salih are. I'm not going to go to people that, for example, have some Ash'ari or Sufi or Maturidi, and I start saying, oh, you know, Allah's hand can be this, and I change my position. No, you like me how I am. Alhamdulillah. I'm not here to debate you, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala above his throne or not. I'm here to work with you in some orphanage, or work with you in political issues, or work with you in fiqh, or we have to give fatwa on modern issue related to the COVID people who died. How can we make janazah on them? You know, I don't need to, because I'm not, deen is not a politics. That's what Shaykh Razak rahimahullah advised to me. He said, well, work with everybody. As long as khair, alhamdulillah, but as everybody knows who you are and what you stand for. And that's why I always say that is how it used to be in the early time. What do you think Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah has a lot of friends, and he writes beautiful letters to some big Sufi names in his time. And he said, I went to make a peace between the Ash'ari and the Hanbalis. You know, he doesn't have, but when it comes to what is Ahl Sunnah said about this issue versus what the Ash'ari said, he's clear. And it's not fair to ask me to give up what I believe. You know, one of the also beautiful advice that I learned from Shaykh Al-Albani rahimahullah, even though I met him few times in my life, and I spent few days only with him, or weeks, but it was priceless, the amount of information I got from him. One of the things that he said, and he says this a lot in his talk, if you ever listen to him, he said, somebody asked him about the famous statement of Sheikh Al-Albani rahimahullah, the founder of Al-Ikhwan, when he said, نجتمع فيما اتفقنا عليه ويعذر بعض مما اختلفنا فيه. We work together in the things that we agree on, and we excuse one another in the things that we don't agree upon, we disagree with. The Shaykh Al-Albani rahimahullah said, this statement is good, but it should be changed. Changed to what? He said it should be changed to something better. And subhanAllah, Hassan al-Banna is not an alim, he's a da'iyah. Okay, but Shaykh Al-Albani alim, and that's the difference, subhanAllah. He said, نجتمع فيما اتفقنا عليه, we work together on things that we agree upon. وينصح بعضنا بعضا فيما اختلفنا فيه. And he said, and we advise one another in the area that we disagree with. He said, because ya'dhur, it means, khalas, I don't care about you. No, I care. That's why if I see you wrong, I will give you my advice. But after the advice, I don't need to cut you off. I don't need to curse you. I don't need to kick you out of the manhaj, or kick you out of Islam, or kick you out of of the Sunnah as if this Sunnah is like my father's inheritance. You know, that's not how it works. So these are very beautiful advices that I learned as I grow up, and seeing the beginning of the division that happened after Gulf War I and things of that nature. But I always learn that hold into what is the vast majority of the scholars upon, hold into what the main theme. Don't pick one statement of Bin Baz like some people do. Don't pick one statement of Salih al-Fawzan, or don't pick a certain era in Bin Fawzan's life. Because Sheikh Salih al-Fawzan is one person that a lot of people use him. And I study with Sheikh Salih al-Fawzan, rahimahullah, hafidhahullah ta'ala. He's an amazing scholar, one of my favorite scholars. You know, a lot of people don't know that. One of the scholars that I love so much and might put me in trouble to say that, Sheikh Muhammad Aman al-Jami, rahimahullah. And I consider him a genius. I consider him as a genius. And I have very soft spot for Sheikh Muhammad Aman al-Jami. And I disagree with some of the things that he have said. But, yeah, and I can share with you an interesting story. You know, you don't get that much, you know, story, someone like me. When Sheikh Muhammad Aman, rahimahullah ta'ala, I love Sheikh Muhammad Aman, has nothing to do with Dawah. I love Sheikh Muhammad Aman because I'm a theology researcher. His book about Ibn al-Aql and the Rushd is an unbelievable book. His early writing about إثبات الصفات الإلهية بالأدلة النقلية والعقلية is an incredible book. It's unbelievable. For his time, to write something like that, that was amazing book. That's what made me attach to Sheikh Muhammad Aman. Not his talk about saying that Bush is a gentleman and Bush is a great man, you know, after Gulf War, some statement like, I'm not sure he said that, or Sheikh Rabia, one of them. That's not what attracted me to Sheikh Rabia or Sheikh, you know, Sheikh Rabia, rahimahullah. I know Sheikh Rabia before all this fitna happened before. I remember going to him to study with him Muqaddimat Sahih Muslim, you know, to read with him. And he became, anyway, just the point that I'm trying to say here is those scholars, I love them for the ilm that they have. I don't get stuck in some of the area that today I see clear mistakes. This is not how Mashayikhna were. This is not how the majority of the ulama were doing. So the story I was telling about Amal Jami, he was talking about attacking some of the du'at because at that time, they were talking openly about some of the government mistakes and stuff like that. And he was very worried about the shabab and the ummah, in my opinion. Anyway, so it became so tense in one of the brothers' house. And this brother, subhanAllah, turned completely angry at me after that. I think he ever allowed me to go to his house again. But I told Sheikh Muhammad Aman Jami, I said, Sheikh, what do you think of this? And he said, what? Then I told him, there is two things. An-nasiha to Ulat al-Amr, to the leaders, should be in private. That's something the hadith came, we talk about this, personal nasiha to them. And that's what the hadith is. But as for inkarul munkar, when you see something wrong, you can correct that action of the person publicly. Like I give you, Sheikh Adil, nasiha about something. But if I see you drinking with your left hand, I can tell you in front of people, don't drink with your left hand. So that's one. Two, there's a difference between the munkar that has to do with personal life and the munkar that it is public. So I can say publicly, banks and interest and riba and stuff like that, haram. But I don't need to go to talk about the owner of the bank, so and so. And if we see this, I think we don't need to have a disagreement. We all agree with each other, you and those who debating you. Then he said, say it again. So I said it again. He loved it. He said, you come next to me. You sit here next to me. And he was so happy with it. And he talked to me after that. We were just studying stuff. What I'm trying to say that I did not let this reputation, and at that time people talked very bad about him. stopped me also from learning from him. And because I love his writing, rahimahullah. But unfortunately, many of the people who carry his legacy after that, they just ruined it, unfortunately.
Sheikh, last question, and then we'll
sorry, I know it's a sensitive topic.
Yeah, no, I know, inshallah, and I'm sure the viewers will appreciate and inshallah benefit from your experience and your wisdom. Just
but that's history.
Living with you know, these mashayikh. Sheikh, what struggles did you find, you know, when you were gaining knowledge? What sort of struggles did you find, and how did you overcome them? How did you overcome these struggles?
I think one of the biggest struggle for me was, I'll put it from two perspectives. One from ilm itself. Okay, I had a lot of struggles when I read in the ilm itself, because most of the ilm is people repeating one another, just copying one another. Very, unfortunately, very few in ilm when it comes to people like trying to be critical thinkers and to analyze and to break it down and just to reshaping it, as we say, in what it is. Very few people have this ability. On the top of that, let Shaykh Al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah ta'ala, where he would read a whole entire book, then he would bring it back to you from his way. And Shaykh Al-Razaq had this ability, and he's one of the people who always inspire. He'd been always an inspiration for me in this area, and Shaykh Hamad al-Shitwi, wafaqahullah ta'ala. So that's a struggle in the learning itself. You know, I think there is a lot of work need to be done, especially in ilm usul al-fiqh and ilm al-nahu and ilm, you know, in certain ulum kida, there must be revolutions done to it, in my opinion. That's one area. The other struggle also is, as you grow older, you have a lot of responsibilities. And these responsibilities of family, community, dawah, and even if you put yourself as a public figure, you know, I had to deal with a lot of politics in our community, have to deal with a lot of interfaith work, elected officials, you know, government stuff, this became a lot of responsibility for the Imam and your kids growing and so forth. So it became hard for you to balance between all of this. And that's why I said, one thing will help a lot. If we please help one another to fulfill the obligations and not to get distracted. You know, I don't think we need distraction. I don't need to think about someone have no better things in life to do except to make a silly comments on Waleed or Ahmed or whether then I have to reply to see, I have to read this, I have to worry about this. Usually we don't reply. But you know what? I think there is, if you have something, just talk to the person. And it's a struggle for me to see this as a very distraction to the khair that many people do. Also, we need help. We need young people to come. We need young people to commit to ilm. We need people to care about learning the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I don't care how old are you. You know, I was telling my students last week in my class, I said to them, Al-Kasai rahimahullah is one of the greatest scholars in ilm al-qira'at wa nahu, is a famous scholar. He was walking with, I think he was like cattle or something like that. So he saw a woman dragging her son to the school. And she told him, hey, you have to go to school, otherwise you're going to end up like him. And she pointed to him. فقال بئس الرجل أنا يضرب بها المثل. He said, well, I became the example of like the worst outcome, you know? And he said, I felt very offended by that. And that's actually what motivated him to seek knowledge. And guess what? He was in his 40s. And he became one of the great scholars of Islam. It's never too late. You can make your life great. You know, I think that's something, a struggle that I have. I struggle to see why we don't have a lot of commitment today and knowledge, especially here in the West. I know there's a lot of responsibilities, but it will help a lot when we have good students, because good students make good teacher. Believe it or not, good teachers make good students, but also good students make good teachers, because they ask good questions. They force me to go research. They force me to update my knowledge. You know, it is important to do that. One of the things that I care to do, I care to teach classes in my masjid and a weekly classes. You know why? Because if I travel around just teaching the same thing, I don't need to prepare too many things. I just recycle the same talk in many different places. But now I have every week a lecture, every week a class, every week a new verse, a new hadith that I need to explain. And that makes you grow. So that's a struggle that we need to keep that. And you need help. You need those, maybe because I was raised knowing that there's a lot of people in my life help me and aid me. And I will end with this, just last point. One of the things that I'm going to share, just because to show how important this concept is. I still, until today, alhamdulillah, I care to, especially before with this pandemic, everything changed. But before that, I care to go to Saudi Arabia, for example, 2 times, at least in a year, 2 to 3 times. And these 2 to 3 times, my main purpose of there is to study with my mashayikh. I still go and to read with my teachers, and you know, they are my friends now more than my teachers, but I still see them as a teachers. I still go and read with them book, read with them papers that I wrote. I spend hours on you know, and phone calls and Google, thanks to Google, you know, calling them and reviewing with them. And that's important for the mashayikh. To never ever is too big for ilm or knowledge. So if this is the case of those who spend a good time of their life seeking knowledge, I think it's important for everyone here listening to me today is to make that commitment. And it's not hard, by the way. It's not hard to seek knowledge, especially with all the technology that you guys have today. Wallahi, if you just commit yourself, if you understand Arabic especially, okay? And let's say you understand Arabic and you're going to commit yourself to listen to the whole series of Sheikh Bin Baz or Salih al-Sheikh in Sharh Kitab al-Tawheed. Or you're going to listen to an English series by one of the student knowledge, which is something correct, trusted, and you're going to listen to it. You will gain a lot just while you are walking. By the way, seeking knowledge, you remember what we start with? To remove ignorance from self. Seeking knowledge is not about you being sheikh or mufti. It's about you worshiping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala upon ilm and upon nur, upon huda. Ibn Mubarak was asked, if you die and you'll be given a chance to go back to the dunya, what would you come back to do? He seek knowledge. أطلب العلم. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us among the students of knowledge. And thank you very much. I talk too much, so but there's a lot. You just you know, inspiring and reminding me of good days. But I always say, alhamdulillah, I do believe I have, inshallah, better days ahead of me.
Inshallah. Jazakumullah khair, Sheikh. Nafa'allahu bikum. That he continues to bless you in your effort and in your da'wah. And inshallah, that once this pandemic is over, we get to meet again.
Inshallah, bidhnillah.
At the masjid, inshallah.
Inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.